Welcome everyone to another episode of Keto Chat. I am your host, Carole Freeman, and today I'm excited to be here with Dr. Eric Westman. For those of you that don't know who he is, you must be living under a rock, but let me tell you, Dr. Eric Westman is co-founder and chief medical officer at HEALcare, co-founder of Adapt Your Life, associate professor of medicine at Duke University. He's also board certified in Internal and Obesity Medicine, and clinical research in obesity and diabetes includes over 45 peer-reviewed articles. He is past chairman of the board of Obesity Medicine Association. He's also a fellow of the Obesity Society and co-editor of a medical textbook on obesity. He is also the author of the New York Times bestseller, The New Atkins for a New You. Welcome, Dr. Westman.
Thank you very much.
We've had the opportunity to hang out a couple of times at some conferences around this great country. You're joining us now from North Carolina?
Right, from Durham, North Carolina. That's where Duke University is.
Excellent. Okay. I'm out here in Seattle, and it's been freezing lately. How's the weather in the fall winter down there in North Carolina?
Well, it can be nice. This weekend we were up in the 70s, but now we're back down to the 30s, okay. 40s. So yeah, it does get cold every now and then here.
I got to get out there one of these times. Can you believe I've never been to the East Coast of this country?
Well, we're thinking about maybe doing a conference either fall when you're just starting to get really cold, or spring when it's spring here and everyone else is still under the snow.
Oh, nice.
That's when the North Carolina really shines.
Oh, nice. Oh, that would be great. All right. Well, I'm curious, how did you get started in medicine? What was your life before you're doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to be a doctor. That's an easy thing to talk about.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Father was a doctor, wanted to be a doctor, always wanted to go to medical school. But the reason was curiosity, not any other, I didn't have any purpose like to become a surgeon, or it was just kind of general helping people, be a doctor. So it led me to internal medicine, which is, for those who don't know, it's kind of like you're the doctor of all of the different organs when they go bad. And so you fix different organs. And I was attracted to multi-system kind of problems, like if the joint problem, but it would also affect the liver or the brain, and so infectious disease, rheumatology. And now it turns out that same curiosity has led me to obesity medicine, or more specifically, keto medicine, or more specifically, just changing the food, because it fixes so many things. And so I was always attracted toward challenging cases. So I stayed as what's called a chief resident after residency. It was a job that not many were chosen to do. And then went through a clinical research fellowship at Duke University, where I learned how to do statistics and to formalize ideas into research and publish papers. And so out of curiosity and taking care of patients, two of my patients did this wacko diet. A wacko diet. Now we know that it's not wacko, but back then in 1998, two of my patients, can you believe it, lost 50 pounds by just eating steak and eggs. It was unique because no one had lost weight. So I'm in an ambulatory care, VA, Veterans Affairs hospital. I'm taking care of patients, and I send all my patients to the dietitians, and no one would be losing weight, because the standard approach, well, for most dietitians even today, is the low fat, low calorie, which really doesn't work for most people. Works for some, but so anyway, two people lost this weight, and I asked them how they did it, and steak and eggs. And oh, come on, and no, they said it was this book. You have to look at this book. I said, oh gosh, a diet book? Are you kidding me? I'm a researcher. I'm a physician at a university, and so I read the book after being shamed and guilted into it, and I knew it would be harmful because you'd be eating all this fat. Mm-hmm. So one of my patients comes back and says, why are you worried about it? And I said, you're eating all this fat, your cholesterol will go up. And he said, oh, well, why don't you check it? Why don't you check my cholesterol? He said. I said, well, okay. Today I've heard stories of doctors who won't even check it because they know it will be bad. So I'm not sure what it was. Again, I think it was that curiosity thing. And I thought, well, okay, I'll check it. Well, 2 in a row, they lost weight doing the Atkins diet, which everyone said was bad, and their cholesterol gets better by any way you look at it. So either lightning strikes twice in the same place, or maybe what we were taught was wrong. So I guess it was a strange thing for most people to consider, but what I did is I looked at the bookstore and found the only doctor still in practice was Dr. Atkins. Mm. So why not write him a letter? See what he says. So he calls back, kind of to my surprise. I kind of forgot I'd written the letter, but we talk on the phone, and I say it's all anecdotal, it's all in your book, and he says, and I say you need research, and he says, well, why do I need research? I know what you'll find. I've been doing this 30 years, and my colleagues at Duke in research said, what are you doing? The guy's writing books to make money. The diet doesn't work clearly. There's no studies behind it. But again, there was that curiosity thing. So Dr. Atkins broke the ice, I think, and said, well, he cleared the logjam and said, why don't you come to my clinic? So, on my nickel, I went up to New York City. He had a big clinic, 4-story flat in Midtown Manhattan. And I sat in the office of Dr. Atkins and Jackie Eberstein. Now, Jackie was a nurse who was skeptical about the Atkins diet. Her story is very compelling too, but all of her medical issues and hypoglycemia and palpitations were gone by her doctor, and anyway, it was Jackie actually that kind of let me sit in the office where we were actually looking at charts. We were seeing people come in. So I go back, I pitch a study. I design a study and say you should fund it. And he does. So Dr. Atkins funds the first study on the Atkins diet. This is 1999 now. And I go back to Duke, and basically they say, you're crazy. The guy's got everything to lose. And they hired Broadway performers to come into the clinic to be actors. That was the level of skepticism they had, and I see that today in other areas of just kind of the disbelief and often arrogance of the people in power. So anyway, we do a study, it looked great, 6 months. So 50 people over 6 months, publish it in a peer-reviewed journal, and then I'll carefully consider what you're talking about. But anything else, that weeds out, 90% of what you see on the internet. Show me a paper. For us, that paper was published in 2002.
Okay.
So now that, is some time ago. So a lot of people have forgotten about that. But so we went back, said you need to do another study, randomized trial. And Dr. Yancey, I brought him on my team, and he and I now have studied this for almost 20 years. And now some people have studied it all around the world. And counter to what we were all taught, it's actually not only therapeutic for diabetes, obesity, pre-diabetes, all these things. It may actually be healthier to eat without eating, or to live without eating many carbs than it is to live eating a lot of carbs. So it's come, 180 degrees to not only does it not kill you, it actually helps a lot of medical issues. And that's been my focus as an internal medicine doctor. How can I use this in an internal medicine clinic? And I know it's still hard for a lot of people, doctors, dietitians, nurses, any health practitioner. We were all taught that this was not something you wanted to do, or if you did, you didn't want to do it very long. And now the latest science is saying that it might even be better to live without eating many carbs at all. So I got it in, listening to my patients, I wasn't so overtrained to say, oh, it can't be true. But I took it stepwise, not just starting to use it in my practice. After 8 years of research, we opened a clinic at Duke that uses the keto diet as the first line treatment. We opened that clinic called the Duke Lifestyle Medicine Clinic in 2006. So I've been treating people in a clinical setting in a university insurance pay system for the last 12 years now.
Well, I love that you're talking about all this, especially the history, because every day I'm talking to people that, their doctors said, or they heard that, this isn't sustainable. It hasn't been proven safe for very long. And we've got people like you that have been doing this for decades and seeing.
I hate it when you say it like that. It doesn't seem that long. either I had a lot of fun, time went fast, or maybe just 2 decades goes by pretty fast.
Yeah. And I haven't memorized and read all of your studies, so I'm curious. I'm going to mention one, and then I'm curious if you had any influence on it or not. But so when I was in my I did an undergrad and graduate program in nutrition, back to back, and so I was in school from 2007 through 2012, and so I'm pretty sure it was in my undergrad, so somewhere between 2007 and 2009 is when I stumbled across the A to Z diet study published in 2004. Right. Were you involved in that, or
no? Okay. No, that was Christopher Gardner at Stanford.
Okay. Yeah. And I remember, I went to Bastyr University, right? Which the whole time we were there, don't fear fat, right? We didn't fear fat, but also, healthy carbs, right? Like whole grains and don't cut out any foods was the approach that I was trained in was, if you restricted diets, eat whole foods, don't fear fat, but also don't restrict diets because that's what causes eating disorders and people just can't ever keep the weight off. So don't try to make them feel bad about themselves. So I found this A to Z study. It wasn't presented as anything. We weren't learning about low carb diets at all. As any kind of therapeutic approach. And I found this study, doing research for something, and I presented it, I talked to my professor about it, my nutrition professor, and I said, have you seen this study? For those people who are watching this, the A to Z study showed, they compared, Atkins, the zone diet, and then was it Ornish or Printkin?
Yeah, Ornish.
Ornish, okay, which is a very low fat diet. And so basically I ran the gamut. We've got the high fat, low carb, we've got the middle zone diet, and then we've got the super low fat diet. And they found all across the board, everything they measured, got the Atkins diet won, and all races. Plus the other thing that always stood out to me was that it showed that after people went off the diet or long term, the people that followed Atkins were able to maintain more of their weight loss longer than any of the other diets as well. And so when I presented this to my professor, like, what is this? Like, how is this? We know Atkins bad for you. Like, how is this? And she was like, yeah, it's, that study came out and it was such a surprise. We just didn't know what to make of it. So we just kind of swept it under the rug and ignored it because it didn't fit with what we knew was true. So the information has been out there a long time. We've been choosing to ignore it because it doesn't fit with our paradigm.
Right. Well, another among the studies that were done, that most were low carb versus low fat, not the 4 groups of the A to Z trial. So that was a really important study to go across the whole range and not just it's a false choice to say low fat or high fat because there's this whole range in between. But the people who did those studies originally wanted to show that the low carb diet was bad. Low carb, high fat was bad. And when they found that it wasn't bad, they didn't do another study. So it's fascinating because it was the first time they ever did a low carb study, all of these people, and none of them went to talk to Dr. Atkins, or it turns out Dr. Yancey and I were the only ones to go and approach someone who knew something about the diet, how to implement it. And so the adherence that we had in our study and the effects were better than the others. But of all of the people who did a one and done kind of, oh, well, it wasn't bad, didn't kill anyone, we're not going to continue this research because we didn't show it was bad. Christopher Gardner at Stanford persisted and carried on and did some further research. And I have to give him credit for that because he could have done the one and done. And in our studies, we always say that, well, the control group works, whether it was low glycemic or low fat, but the low carb keto works better. But again, that doesn't fit in this all or nothing, we win, they lose kind of world. So that's why I don't think our studies get a whole lot of media attention because we don't claim that something wins. You know, we say that, well, they both work, but this works better. We just wanted to get it. I think we were successful in getting it at the table of something to consider. And that's a huge change from 10 years ago, where nobody even thought this was worthy of research. Of course, remember my story is I went to visit Dr. Atkins, who had done this for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I'm just carrying a baton forward. You know, I didn't create this. And I learned how to formalize things in a research program at Duke, you know, with really good clinical research. And so as my brother says, it's my brother Eric, he validated the Atkins diet. It's kind of, you know, what did he do? You know, can you summarize my whole research life in one sentence?
Yeah.
And, but there are a lot of other people now who have recreated, or you never want to study, value one study. There's always replication. And this has now been replicated in research centers all over the world. But again, it goes against the paradigm that eating fat would always be bad. And this bursts that paradigm, because at least in the context of low carb, eating fat is not bad. And, you know, the question remains of, if you eat high carb, high fat, is fat bad? I think fat can be fattening. Yes, if you have the insulin signal from carbohydrates. So when you're eating carbs, fat can go to fat. But when you're not eating carbs, it's really hard to gain weight. I mean, you can, but because that insulin signal has come down so much. So, you know, it's been fun. I think when it becomes mainstream and I don't see disbelief or you know, oh, I can't believe that, this won't be as fun anymore.
I know.
Try
like,
to flip it that way.
Instead of selling all the sick care that we have now, we'll have to have a lot more yoga and weight training studios or something to help people.
I'm all for that.
Yeah. I want to clear up a myth that's out there real quick, though, too, because often when you bring up Atkins, there's still this pervasive myth out there that, like, oh, didn't he die of a coronary, you know, heart attack or, you know, blocked arteries?
Right. No, he didn't. In fact, I was doing research at that time. So I made a couple visits to New York City to visit Dr. Atkins, and he slipped on the ice in New York City during a freak snowstorm. In fact, I know the doctor who found him on the way to work. And so he had a you know, brain injury and passed away, I think, within a week or 10 days. But yeah, the media attention that by the people who don't want you to do the diet was that diet doctor dies heavy, dies obese, and died of heart disease. And yeah, to this day that I hear that frequently, you know, well, didn't he die of his diet? I said, well, no, you know, didn't he have heart disease? And well, so it's more complicated. I think he had what was called a cardiomyopathy, which was from a visit to Eastern Europe. He traveled a lot, especially in Europe. And so, you know, I'm sorry, it's more complicated than, you know, he was healthy and great. And I mean, everyone dies eventually. And he did not die of a heart attack, best we can tell. Although, you know, I gave a talk to other doctors about that time. And one of the doctors said, well, he must have had a heart attack, then he slipped on the ice. I was like, how can you go there? Anyway.
Yeah.
Doctors sometimes are not so friendly, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, there's this psychological phenomenon that when you've believed something to be true for a long time, despite mountains of evidence in your face, you don't want to believe it. I mean, I've done work at, you know, I'm here in Microsoft territory, and years ago, so they have, every year they have a health event where they, you know, do some biometric screening, cholesterol and you know, blood sugar and all that. And then the dietitian nutritionist can counsel people on how to change their numbers, basically. And, you know, there were other dietitians that were at these events, and I'm secretly, you know, saying like, hey, have you seen this, like, low carb stuff? And that was how I was counseling people even before I did keto myself, was like, reducing your carbs and sugar were going to be a way to fix all this stuff. And there were, and it was right at the time, so this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago when we started having research and articles coming out about how saturated fat wasn't going to kill you. Right. And there were dietitians that were there that they were like, even though the research was really solid, they were like, yeah, I don't
I
believe
know.
it though. I don't believe it though. And she literally said that to me, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, but it would be like you were raised religious
Mhm.
and someone said there is no God. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's a hard thing because it is a belief system. Well, no, the low fat thing was entirely a belief system.
Hmm.
It was shoddy science, and so we all were kind of convinced, not on science but on belief. And now when science comes out, I guess it's easy to dismiss it. And sadly, the different diet approaches sometimes get put into salesmanship too fast. So it's kind of like, well, my car is better than your car, but you wouldn't hear one car manufacturer saying the other car didn't work, or one might be safer than another, or but you wouldn't say that car doesn't drive. I mean, that's right. So now, I mean, I'll in the right audience. So the cardiologists in Canada had a workshop that I attended. Uh, Blair O'Neill, who's a former president of that organization, got a workshop, and we talked about the keto diet and a cardiology conference. Actually, there was a great interest. It was standing room only at this meeting, and but there's still all these furrowed brows and disbelief about the fat and all that. And the first question at the microphone, of course, even though we showed data of fat being eaten, all these things getting better, and all, the first question at the microphone was, well, doesn't saturated fat harm you? So again, we show all the evidence, and then there's we're going against something we all believe, which that's not science, that's belief.
Right, right. Yeah, thankfully we've got a lot of great books out now. We can refer people to
Yeah.
explaining it all if people are willing to take the time. So let's go down a little bit that that this fat and cholesterol thing. Like, I know it's a really complicated topic, but what do you say when you tell people about this diet and they say like, well, isn't that going to make my cholesterol go up? Like,
well, 2/3 of the time it doesn't. So if you were rolling the dice, in fact, I look back at those two patients I had, it was a 60% chance each time that it would get better, and it did. So a third of the time it won't look better based on the way that you look at it traditionally. So and so that's easy. I'll say, well, let's try it and see, and I'm gonna win 2/3 of the time, even if we look at it the old way. But so the third of the time, when the total and the LDL cholesterol might go up, the HDL and the triglyceride get better. The HDL goes up, good cholesterol, and the triglycerides go down. So if I have the time to teach someone and follow the levels, I just say the old way was to look at this way. I'll cover the screen, where the cholesterol levels are. So the old way, it looked bad. But the new way, it looks good. So it takes a little time to explain that. Someone comes in, my cholesterol is really high on this. If you're losing weight at that time, all bets are off. So even low fat, so not high fat, even low fat diets with weight loss will be able to raise the cholesterol. So you don't look at a cholesterol level while you're losing weight. Wait until you're at the goal, or close to your goal. That's I guess rule number one. The next thing is that you want to look at the triglyceride and HDL, not the total and LDL. If you want to look at the type of LDL, you can get a test to look at the small and the large and the particles and all that. But I have come to the point where I'll just reassure people and say it's going to be fine, and that's all the person wants to know.
yeah.
I mean, so it's like me going to the car mechanic. Just tell me you fixed it.
Yeah.
I don't really want to know if it's the this, the that, the gasket on the this. I mean, I used to know all that. Now I don't, So just tell me that it's fine, and you fixed it. So, I'll have people fly to me, in North Carolina from, lots of places just to be told that it's okay. And you don't have to go on a statin drug. And, okay. So isn't that crazy? I mean, but again, that's the culture that we were all taught that eating fat would be bad and raising cholesterol would be bad. And now, you know, there's an elite group of people with very high LDLs in a Facebook group with Dave Feldman runs it. So that if your LDL is over 200, you can join this group. Of course, the 200 LDL is really high.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the, you know, in your face, you know, LDL is not going to kill you. Let's all band together. And so if someone does have a really high LDL like that, I'll encourage them to join that group. And
I didn't know that he had the group. Do you know the name of the group?
Lean Mass Hyperresponder.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course, Dave Feldman is the young man, not a researcher or medical guy, but he was just curious about cholesterol. And I remember seeing him on the low carb cruise. He had cholesterol levels 5 times a day. I'm like, what are you doing? He said, well, look, it changes. I'm like, well, you know, we really don't know how to look at these things, us doctors. And he said, no, but look at the biologic changes. And so now he's got a protocol where you eat high fat, like thousands of calories of fat a day, and your cholesterol plummets, right? So he says this is something you should do before your insurance test, because they value the low cholesterol to give you better insurance. And, or I guess conversely, if it's high, you might have to pay more. So you have to hand it to Dave. He self-funds on as a Patreon, so you can actually help fund his research. And even one time at Keto Fest, which is one of the festivals going around the country about keto diets, he recruited people to change their diet, and he brought all the equipment to check the blood on all of these people, got the approvals and all that, and did a little study of people who came to this town around the diet. I mean, so that's really fantastic. Of course, we're trying to get the medical, I'm helping a little best I can, the medical mainstream to at least engage in how can this happen, what's the biology, and there's a big resistance because, again, it shatters the paradigm that eating lots of fat is always bad.
Yeah, his research he's doing is really fascinating. I'm really excited to see where it goes. Is there any talk of actually a bigger study that'll get published from this, or?
I'm not sure. And Dave works pretty fast, so I think I don't know. I know he's building a team. He's not not trained as a researcher, so that actually is a process of learning how to put data into a certain format and all that. So, but he's presenting at meetings quite avidly, showing all the data. It's available on his blog and on YouTube. So I hope that there'll be some publications. But the world exists, and there's information that never gets into publications that's still valid. So there's no study that says the sun will come up tomorrow, but I'm banking on it, but so I mean, that's the extreme case.
That's funny though. That's not true.
Yeah. I mean, so there's kind of an intellectual laziness to ignore until it comes into a paper. Of course, I said that at the beginning of the show, that if you don't have a paper in a peer-reviewed journal, 6 months of 50 people on your diet, don't bother me. I don't want to look at it. But that's just because I want to weed out the wheat from the chaff. There's so much to be able to consider, and I can't possibly know everything. And I'm pretty focused on the keto science, and that's just a way for me not to have to be bothered by all the which might be really good stuff. Like intermittent fasting and total fasting is in that sort of holding room, if you will, of it's not in the medical mainstream very well. The old data says you might risk using your own protein if you fast for too long. The new theories is you have autophagy and you're going to be able to preserve your protein. But until that science is put into papers and vetted that way, I don't have the confidence in that I do in the keto low carb approach. So that's kind of my process of how I look at what is happening, what people say. Individual results are great, and everyone is different. But if you're going to do a policy level decision that yes, 1 million people can do this, you want to have better confidence that it's a safe thing to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of your companies, Adapt Your Life.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing with
So
that?
Adapt Your Life, yeah, it's a product company basically. So after a long time of kind of staying out of the fray of business, I decided to get into that world to create things that I thought were really needed. So there were really no truly low carb keto products that didn't have a whole lot of junk put in it. So I was approached by my business partner, hey, why don't we um, really create excellent products that are clean eating, you don't have all these artificial preservatives and all that, and they're truly low in carbs. So that's Adapt Your Life. In fact, there's a keto bar, there's a coffee shots and fat shots for quick uh, fat source or protein source. It's basically nut butters, and then the coffee shots are like the almost, you know, a lot less calories than bulletproof coffee, but the same kind of idea that you switch from cream to using oils that will raise the ketones a little bit. And then there's a cereal product as well. There are other bars that are coming out in the future. So Adapt Your Life really is the filling the niche of a truly low carb convenience food. You know, it's not meant to be a meal replacement. Our philosophy is still to have real food as much as possible. But the website has a free side of teaching. I did a video teaching for Adapt Your Life, and a lot of question and answers are, if they're not medical questions, are answered at the Adapt Your Life website. So it's been fun. I've got Glenn and Yale Finkel are my business partners, and they decided let's put on some fairs around the country on Saturday so people don't have to travel to the big conferences. And we did that, and we're going to do that again this next year, where we've seen 100, 120 people come out on a Saturday in Vancouver, in Houston, and in North Carolina. There were 390 people, so almost 400 people that came out on a Saturday to talk low carb and keto, and then you don't have to travel anywhere. So the philosophy there is to bring local experts together with local people and Adapt Your Life. These are called Adapt events. The idea is to support people in their low carb keto journey. So it's actually a lot of information as well. It's not just products. You know, the current model that I understand of selling things is not to sell. What you want to do is give information, and make sure people value that information first.
Well, and as far as I know, as knowledgeable as I am about keto products out there, I'm pretty sure you guys are the only ones that have the little keto bar that actually is just doesn't have a bunch of fillers and things in it, right? So they're small, because most times we're used to the really big ones with bulky fillers and stuff like that in them, but a lot of those aren't as keto friendly as the label says they are. So you guys are doing a good job with actually having.
Thank you. Yeah, the keto bar, they're surprisingly filling because there's so much fat in it. And so that's the other barrier that these product companies wouldn't burst through. They're actually high fat products, and you get protein with it as well. And then the natural ingredients, so that you're not having all that artificial stuff. So it's a paleo friendly kind of thing. Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your approach to low carb and keto. I've seen your talks on YouTube where you're doing your explaining what the diet is to a group of people, right? Or you're training other physicians actually in how to implement it. And you have just a no nonsense, keep it really simple approach. Do you want to speak about that, about how it is, training other people to do something that seems so simple?
Sure. Well, I borrowed the system that Dr. Atkins and Jackie Eberstein developed, actually, and we use that in our research studies. So any research study that you read about what we've done has used the system I use. Okay. It's actually a sheet of paper of food with a limitation on the high calorie items like cheese, oils, and cream, and mayonnaise. So the problems that I see today in the keto, I just learned it off the internet or from my friends, is people are consuming zero carb items that are very high in calories. So, so put it another way, if you don't have the sheet, you want to stay under 20 total carbs, not net. You want to eat fatty sources of protein. Don't add fat, just eat protein, but don't fear the fats. And then eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. And actually, this was the 3-phrase item that Casey Durango of Go Keto with Casey created based on the system that she learned from me. So it's under 20 grams total, not net. That erases all of the other products and all that. It's eating fatty sources of protein. Don't add fat. Don't have oils and butters and excessive cream and cheese. And then if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. So what I see, a lot of people don't use the 20 total gram rule. And they say, oh, I'll have 40 or I'll do 20 net or something. So just going to 20 total fixes a lot of the people who are stuck. And then the next item is the idea that you have to limit high calorie things. Well, but the coconut oil had no carbs. So I had all of this bulletproof coffee. So one person was having thousands of calories. I'm sure you see this. Thousands of calories of bulletproof coffee and wondered why they weren't losing weight.
And they're saying, but it keeps me full and satisfied.
Well, so especially if you're trying to lose weight, we want the fat to come from your body fat, not the fat you eat or drink. So that's a common mistake I see in the current kind of keto. You got to eat fat to burn fat. No, the best way to burn fat is to not eat anything. I mean,
right.
But that's not healthy. You don't want to do that too long.
That's so funny. Like I had one of my clients this morning ask that very question. She goes, what's the optimal macros to lose weight as fast as possible? I said, 0 grams of everything is going to lose weight the fastest. It's just not sustainable though.
Well, so I mean, what we're seeing is that these apps, these people who are new to the field think that that's all you need to know. And again, there are no studies, 50 people over 6 months with any of these new apps or products or all that. So, be careful about all of those things. Have real food as much as possible. So, proteins to me mean any kind of meat, poultry, fish and shellfish, and eggs. So that's really the main source of nutrition. And if someone's getting meat-based protein, you don't have to worry about the vitamins and minerals much, because the meat, the eggs, the poultry delivers the vitamins and minerals with the food you're eating. So it makes me worry less about the micronutrients. Now vegetables are limited, right? So we recommend about a cupful, so you get about 5 to 6 carbs in your veggies. So we have a list just put out, and I'll just say, hey, if it's not on this list of vegetables, you can't have it, so that you don't have to look up in an app or on Google or anything. But so that system works really well. Again, it's using one sheet of paper, like the old, if you can't fit it on one sheet of paper, it's too complicated idea, which I like a lot. And of course, if it's in a little book, it might be on 2 or 3 sheets of paper. Had someone who thought that page 4, which is the original page number, was only half of it because it was in a smaller book and it was page 4 and 5. So anyway, and now on Pinterest, I think there's page 4, but one of them has fruit on it, which is not on the original page 4. So anyway, you get the trusted source of information from the program that we've developed.
Excellent. Yeah, the infamous page 4, like that's a.
Well, it's hard for me to gauge, and being on YouTube is not like being on network TV, right? But sometimes people think that, oh, I know all your videos and all that, but I'm starting to worry or wonder, because I was traveling in Europe last fall, and I was at the metal detector going through, and the TSA or the security guy came up to me, and I didn't have my ID or anything. He came up and went, I know you. You're the keto guy. I'm like, oh my, so I thought my travel partner put me up to this. You told him to no. And so I thought for a moment, well, if he truly knows, he said, adapt your life. I watch your videos. This is Portugal. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if this is really true. I said, well, what page is it? He thought for a moment and said, page 4. So, so anyway, that's kind of the freemium. If if you're able to do it on your own, there's going to be gosh, so many people need this that I finally decided that if someone can wrap their head around it, do it on their own with a video, go for it. But a lot of people need the extra help, the coaching, what you do and what we do. And then of course with medical problems. So in my experience, if you have medications and all, you got to be seen by someone who understands the medicines or at least have the knowledge. So if it's a nurse, a dietitian, a doctor, and they're on insulin and they understand insulin and glucose, that, you could wiggle around. That's not a hard and fixed rule, but in North Carolina, it's probably true everywhere. There's some people that don't really understand what insulin does. And so that I prefer to see people for the safety side if they have medical problems or on medications. So, is that your feeling as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody's on any kind of medication, I want before I'll even work with them, I'm like, you need to go talk to your doctor about this. And then I know specifically if, I screen them ahead of time, like, tell me all the medications you're on. And then, okay, it's like, okay, this one is one you're going to need to have a conversation with your doctor on, that you guys need to watch this one, right? Whether check, blood sugar ones, blood pressure ones are the ones that I'm
the main ones.
I'm mainly concerned with, right? And I'm like, I even coach them how to talk to your doctor, because I said, your doctor's probably going to say, like, nobody ever gets off that. You're crazy. Right. I tell them, say, well, this crazy nutritionist I'm working with says that people are like, well, how would I stop how do I wean off of it? So I tell them it's not in my scope to tell you how to take your medication. You need to work with your doctor on it. And this is a powerful diet. It's going to help those be no longer necessary. But if you combine them together, it's very dangerous. So definitely, any medical conditions, I want them, and if their doctor doesn't know, it was still really hard to find doctors that are knowledgeable about what keto does or low carb or anything like that. But I at least want them supervised by their doctor, and I can coach them about how to coach their doctor. So let's talk about your HEALcare clinics. This is really exciting what you've got going on. You're just changing the lives of so many people. But tell us what is HEALcare?
Well, to your last point, there just aren't doctors who understand this. And so after years of, again, kind of who's going to do this, how do we scale it up? I'm very frustrated with the current system. The system has other forces at play. The food, understanding that food really matters is a big barrier for many doctors. They just weren't taught that. Understanding that you don't need medications to do things, you can just change the food, is a big barrier, because a lot of people are taught, oh, you have diabetes, now you're on medicines forever. So frustrated with all that, finally met up with a business team and said, let's start our own company. Let's start a company that trains our own staff to know how to do this. And so after a couple of years of trying to figure out the right business model and all that, we're set. And the business model is kind of like putting a Starbucks in a Walmart or Target. Starbucks makes the coffee and sells it themselves. So we go into the doctor's office, the healthcare system, do our own business, but the people there at the healthcare system or the clinic get the benefit for their patients. So what we found is that if a doctor knows about keto or low carb, they want it for their patients, but they realize that they can't do it themselves, that's perfect for us to go in, do our own practice there. And we've signed on now 4 different clinics. We have a lot of others in the queue. And so we do our own practice, our own medical record, all of that stuff. And the other thing is we trained nurse practitioners and physician's assistants in how to help people get off the medication. There's a new term called de-prescribing, which means taking people off medication.
That's exciting.
So rather than wait for the system to change, which as many of the investors, people who've invested in the company say, they just can't wait. I mean, you can't wait for the American Heart Association to change. Why don't we change it ourselves? So in trying to get to the next level for the company, we decided to do the only kind of way you can invest in a keto company that I'm aware of at the moment, so that an individual can buy stock, buy partial ownership in the HEAL clinics through what's called an equity fundraising, crowdsourcing fundraiser or campaign. So I didn't know much about this kind of mechanism. Of course, my children know all about it. So but it's different. It's not like a Kickstarter where you want to buy the product first. So you give money to the company, and then when the company makes the product, you get it. It's actually you buy stock and get stock in the company, so that when the company grows, you make money from that investment. So it's a way to change the future in the direction that you want it to go. And so current investors are saying things like, I don't want other people to have to wait and figure it out all by themselves. Or mom in California, I live in North Carolina, I want her to get access to this kind of clinic. And one way to do that is through investing in a company. And what's really cool is for as little as $480, you can invest and buy ownership in this company. So I didn't know that it was that little. And I don't do a lot of investing, but I always thought you had to put in $50,000 or something like that. And then angel investors put in millions, and I don't have that kind of money. So for the changing the world for individuals. So if you've been affected by the diet in a good way. So another investor said, I've lost 80 pounds. This is fantastic. I've tried to lose weight all my life. I need to get this. I feel like it's the right thing to do, to put in just a little money into this company to make this available. Of course, as a researcher myself and someone who wrote grants, the big scheme is that we want to change medical care to nutrition care, not medication care. And that's the big picture. But to get the company going, we've decided to do the host clinic within a clinic, like Starbucks and Walmart kind of model to get it going. So it took us a long time to get the right kind of business model to work it in, because the current system doesn't want it for various reasons. And so I'm really excited about it. And you can actually go to the HEALclinics.com website and learn how to do it. You can actually put it on your credit card. I mean, they've really made it easy, and it's not it's the SEC. It's the Securities Exchange Commission. We worked several months to get this all approved, and it's all. The other thing there's no pressure. So you take a look at the website. There's a lot of information about the business model, about who we are, who Jackie Eberstein is, and she and I created the HEAL Clinics teaching model, and we do all of the training ourselves. And so there's no pressure. You can go take a look, and I swipe my credit card, put in the numbers, and I'm investing in this model as well. And I hope for those who want to make this available to other people and maybe even make some money on it. If it becomes profitable, you'll make money. It's not giving it away, remember. I hope you'll consider investment in HEAL Clinics. So HEAL Clinics/offering is direct to the Start Engine page. That's the crowdsourcing platform. Or if you go to the HEALclinics.com, that's HEALclinics, clinics.com. Up at the top, it says for investors, and then that takes you to the same /offering page. So, of course, they've made it's almost too easy, to take the money. But actually, then there's another time where you actually the money isn't debited immediately. Some time passes, and then you get an email saying, "Are you sure you want to do this?" So it's actually there's another step. So that I think the government, SEC, is really careful that businesses don't do this to scam, and so we already have clinics set up. They're in business, and this is offering to take the HEAL Clinics to the next level.
Oh, that's really exciting. I know you've been working hard on this for a while, so yeah, and it's really cool too that people can have an influence. They can invest in something that is changing the health of the world. So it's really great.
Well, and the 20s and 30-year-old folks do this mainly when they want a product, like the Oculus 3D, that was a crowdsourcing fundraiser that got it started. So I guess you have to envision that if you want to have a clinic somewhere, that's the product. Mm-hmm. And it may not be for you, but it might be for your loved one, or do it for the sheer investment of it as well. Of course, you sign off to say, I know that this is a risk and all that, but what's really neat is the level that you can come in at. I think, most people can afford 480. When you look, it tells you the number of investors and also the total amount. So the average investment is about $1,000 per individual, which is great.
Yeah, very, very exciting. Any other things that we didn't talk about that you were hoping I'd ask about?
No, I think the idea of taking this research and clinical knowledge and scaling it up in the product company and then the clinical company is my mission. I mean, it's I have the background in the research and have the business teams now, and this is what I want to do. I'm poised to scale this up to treat as many people as we can. It's like we're treating. There's an epidemic, or there's a flood, and we're creating the relief workers to go fix the flood. So yeah. You don't have to train someone to diagnose 100,000 illnesses. What we need to do is train people to get people off medication, teach them to not eat carbs, and then we can make a big dent in the diabetes and obesity and prediabetes epidemic.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I have one closing question for you.
Of course.
It's the last day on Earth. The meteor's coming at us. We're all going to be wiped out today. What are you going to have as your last meal?
Oh, that's funny. I was just introduced to a dish at a local restaurant. It was pork belly, and the side is pork rinds. And then a beer.
Pork on pork?
Yeah, pork on pork. And then one of the craft beers they have, I think, and then a couple truffles to end the meal,
Nice.
I'm going to go out on bacon. Yeah, a little bit of chocolate at the end.
Okay, nice. Well,
what is your meal? What would you have?
Oh, yeah, I know. I love a good, medium rare filet mignon. Hard
to beat that.
Yeah, I'm thinking like right now it's sounding really good for some reason. It's just some sauteed mushrooms, probably some red wine. I'm trying to think if so sugar doesn't go well with me, right? But I'm wondering if I could eat it right before the meter hit, like maybe a really dense, like a flourless chocolate cake or something like that. But I don't know. I'd even go for the keto version of it just to make sure, like, what if the meter didn't wipe us out? I want to make sure I don't feel like garbage the rest of the hour or how long we have, right? So yeah, I think that's what's sounding good right now.
Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Westman. I really appreciate you sharing. I'm really excited about all the work that you've done over the, decades that you've been doing this work and all the impact. I can't imagine how many people you've changed their lives. So with all the links are down below, everyone, with lots of links and good stuff to share here. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe, but also hit that little bell that's right next to that, because that's what's going to get you the notification that we've got new episodes coming up. But thank you again, Dr. Westman, for being here with us.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.